At the airport, they thought she was just another homeless woman. But when a Navy SEAL suddenly stopped and saluted her, the entire terminal froze. Why? Because of a small, forgotten patch on her shoulder, the Christmas Eve unit, a mark only the military's most silent heroes would recognize. What the world saw was someone broken. What he saw was a female veteran who had survived a mission no one talks about and wasn't supposed to walk away from. Stay with us. This isn't just a military story. It's a story about sacrifice, silence, and what happens when the world finally sees the warrior hidden in plain sight. Subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from all corners of the world. Let's get started. Snowflakes drifted silently outside the frosted windows of Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. Inside, the terminal buzzed with holiday cheer families reunited, children clutching gifts, garlands sparkling with red and gold. But amidst the festive chaos, no one noticed the young woman standing alone near Gate 32. Her name was Scarlett James, a 27-year-old with tired eyes and a heavy olive-green backpack that looked like it had been through war, and it had, clad in worn-out black sweats and combat boots, her presence was ghost-like, as if she didn't belong among the joyful travelers. Most people glanced at her and looked away. Some whispered, "To them." She was just another homeless woman trying to keep warm during the holidays. But Scarlett wasn't there to beg or escape the cold. She was waiting for something, or perhaps someone. Her gaze was fixed straight ahead, unmoved by the bustle. A small patch was sewn near her shoulder, barely visible beneath the strap of her backpack. Christmas Eve unit, Operation Silent Resolve. It meant nothing to the strangers passing her, but to someone who knew, it meant everything. And at that very moment, someone who did know was watching. Scarlett James remained motionless, her expression calm but unreadable as she stood near the airport terminal windows. Travelers rushed past her mothers juggling strollers, businessmen checking their watches, teenagers glued to phones. No one cared to look twice, not until a sharp movement from across the terminal drew sudden attention. Chief Petty Officer Ryan Matthews, a seasoned Navy SEAL dressed in full-service uniform, was walking briskly toward his gate when he stopped mid-step. His eyes locked on the faded patch on Scarlett's backpack. Christmas Eve unit, Operation Silent Resolve. His breath caught. He had seen that patch only once before, and the person who wore it had saved his life. Dropping his duffel bag to the floor, Ryan straightened his posture and raised his hand in a sharp, dignified salute. The sudden gesture froze time in the terminal. Conversations halted. Heads turned, one by one. People stopped to stare. Scarlett blinked. Unsure at first if he was looking at someone behind her, but Ryan's eyes were focused directly on hers, with a solemn intensity that pierced through the noise, through the indifference, through the invisible walls she'd built around herself since returning home. Scarlett slowly stepped forward. The clatter of her boots echoed on the tile floor. Snow still clung to the hem of her pants, and her hands were calloused, scarred, weathered, as she approached him. Ryan's voice rang out, not loud, but with unshakable conviction. "Lieutenant James, Christmas Eve unit. You carried 4 of us through that firestorm in Kandahar. I never thought I'd get to say this, but thank you. You didn't just survive, you saved lives." Gasps rippled through the crowd. People who moments ago had looked at her with disdain or pity now watched with wide eyes. A mother clasped her child's hand tighter. A teenager put away his phone. Scarlett didn't respond at first. Her throat tightened, and for a moment, she feared her knees might give way. She had spent the past year trying to disappear, convinced that no one remembered, no one cared. That her service, her pain, her sacrifices, they were invisible, just like her. She finally nodded and said quietly, "I didn't think anyone remembered that patch." Ryan lowered his salute, stepped closer, and offered his hand. "We don't forget our own, especially the ones who came back carrying more than scars." They shook hands, firm, respectful, meaningful. The kind of handshake that says, "I see you. I know what you've been through." Then something remarkable happened. A TSA agent near the security gate began clapping, then another, and another. Soon, a wave of applause erupted across the terminal. Strangers, men, women, children stood to honor a soldier they had ignored just moments before. Scarlett stood there, stunned. She wasn't used to being seen. Her identity had been buried under PTSD, paperwork, and the stares of strangers who thought she was homeless, broken, forgotten. But in that moment, she wasn't any of those things. She was Lieutenant Scarlett James, a decorated hero, a survivor of one of the most dangerous missions in recent memory. And now, finally, she was being recognized not for how she looked, but for who she was, and what she had endured. A little girl broke away from her parents and ran up to her. "Are you a real soldier?" she asked with wide, innocent eyes. Scarlett smiled gently, kneeling down despite the weight of her gear. "Yes," she whispered. "I am—" The girl handed her a small candy cane and ran back to her family. Scarlett looked at it, holding back tears. Ryan stepped beside her. "Where you headed?" he asked. "Nowhere in particular," Scarlett replied. "Well," he said, gesturing to the crowd still clapping, "you've got somewhere now." And for the first time in what felt like years, Scarlett James didn't feel lost. She felt home. The applause had quieted, but the feeling lingered like warmth in the chest after stepping in from a snowstorm. Scarlett James stood straighter now, the weight of her past still present, but no longer suffocating. For the first time in months, she felt human, seen, respected. Ryan Matthews walked beside her as they made their way to a nearby coffee kiosk. He insisted on buying her something warm. "No soldier drinks vending machine coffee on my watch," he joked. Scarlett managed a chuckle. They found a corner near the windows, where the snow outside painted the airport in a soft, silvery glow. Passers-by still glanced at her, but the looks had changed from suspicion to admiration. A few people even stopped to thank her quietly, just as she lifted the paper cup to her lips. An urgent voice came over the airport loudspeakers. "Attention all passengers, if anyone has seen a woman with a military backpack and Christmas Eve unit patch, please report to security near Gate 27 immediately." Scarlett froze mid-sip. Her pulse quickened. That wasn't normal. She hadn't told anyone where she was going. In fact, she hadn't told anyone she was coming back at all. Ryan's face turned serious. He looked around, scanning the terminal with the instincts of a man who had survived too many war zones. "You expecting someone?" he asked, voice low. Scarlett shook her head slowly. "No. No one knows I'm here." A young officer in a TSA uniform approached cautiously, holding a tablet. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you, but are you Lieutenant Scarlett James?" She hesitated. Then yes. The officer gave a small nod, then turned the screen toward her. "We just received a priority alert from Fort Carson Military Base. They've been trying to reach you. You're requested to report immediately." Scarlett's heart dropped. Fort Carson was her last assigned base, the one she had walked away from after her honorable discharge. She hadn't spoken to anyone there in over a year. Why, she asked, eyes narrowing. The officer didn't answer. Instead, he handed her a private message code. Ryan leaned in. Scarlett tapped the screen. A secure message loaded. Scarlett, if you're seeing this, it means you came back. We didn't know if you would. I can't explain much, but we've uncovered something linked to Operation Silent Resolve. Someone's been looking into classified reports. Someone who wasn't supposed to. We believe your life could be in danger. Report ASAP. Call on Whitmore. She stared at the message, her blood turning cold. Ryan exhaled slowly. That operation was supposed to be buried. Someone's trying to dig it up. Scarlett stood quickly, scanning the room, the strangers, the whispers, the sudden announcement. All of it clicked. What if I was never supposed to come back? She muttered. Ryan straightened beside her. Then it's a damn good thing you did. He leaned in. I can get you on a secure military flight within the hour. You won't be safe out here, not now. Scarlett hesitated, torn between the fragile peace she had just tasted and the storm rising again. She looked down at the candy cane the little girl had given her. So small, so innocent. It reminded her what she had fought for, what she had lost, but also what she still had left to protect. She nodded. Let's go! As they moved quickly through the airport, Ryan guided her toward a restricted corridor. Behind them, a man in a gray overcoat quietly lifted a phone to his ear. His voice was low, sharp. She's moving. Headed to military transport. We missed our window. His eyes followed Scarlett as she disappeared behind the checkpoint. Next time, we don't wait. The humming of the military transport aircraft filled Scarlett James's ears as she sat strapped into a jump seat inside a C-130 Hercules. Her fingers tightened around the webbed seatbelt. The scent of metal, fuel, and the faint trace of cold sweat filled the cabin. It was all too familiar, too much like war. Across from her sat Ryan Matthews, now changed out of his formal uniform into tactical gear provided by the Air Force detachment. He didn't say much, just offered her a protein bar and a nod. His silence wasn't cold. It was the silence of someone who understood. He had seen the look on her face before, the mix of exhaustion and readiness, fear and resolve. As the engines roared louder, the world outside the small window grew smaller. The terminal lights faded behind them. Chicago shrank into darkness. Scarlett stared ahead, barely blinking. You okay, Ryan? Finally asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. No, and that scares me. He leaned forward slightly. Talk to me. Scarlett exhaled. Slow and shaky. I spent the last year trying to disappear. After Kandahar, after the Christmas Eve op, I couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe. Everyone wanted me to move on, like it was some chapter I could just close. Ryan listened without interrupting. I didn't want a parade. I didn't want medals. I just wanted to be forgotten, to live without looking over my shoulder. Ryan nodded slowly. But someone never forgot. And now they're coming back for what you know. She looked down at her hands. I was the only one who saw the full recon files. The mission wasn't just a rescue op. There were civilians involved, intel gathered from deep black channels. We weren't supposed to ask questions. She paused. Her voice dropped. But I did. Ryan's jaw tightened. That patch you wear, it means more than anyone out there realizes. It means you were part of something no one was supposed to survive. Scarlett's eyes met his, and someone's afraid I might remember something I shouldn't. For a moment, the two soldiers sat in stillness. The only sound, the low thrum of the plane and the rattling of cargo. Then Scarlett spoke again, softer, as if confessing to herself more than to Ryan. I used to think silence was strength, that disappearing meant I could protect myself and others, but now I realize silence only gave them time to rewrite the story. Ryan looked at her with steady eyes. Then maybe it's time you write it back. Scarlett leaned her head against the cold metal wall of the aircraft. She thought about the girl at the airport, the candy cane, the crowd that applauded when they saw her as more than just a homeless woman. She'd wanted to vanish because she believed her story no longer mattered. But the truth was, someone needed to remember. And maybe that someone was her. They didn't just try to bury the mission. She whispered. They tried to bury me with it. Ryan's voice was firm. Then we dig you out. He reached into a side pouch and handed her a sealed folder marked with a faded insignia she hadn't seen since the debrief room in Kandahar. Inside were fragments of surveillance, redacted files, and a new name. One she hadn't heard before. This is who gave the original order, Ryan said quietly. The civilian connection. We think he's resurfaced, and not just to cover his tracks, he's building something. Scarlett flipped through the pages slowly, her expression changing with each turn. Shock, anger, determination. So that's what this is about, she muttered. It was never about me talking. It's about me remembering. Ryan nodded. And now you remember. Scarlett set the folder on her lap and looked out the small window again. Snow clouds covered the stars, but the aircraft cut through them steadily. She took a deep breath. Her shoulders relaxed just slightly. I'm done hiding, she said. Ryan smiled. Just a little. Good. Because they're going to come harder now. Scarlett glanced down at her patch Christmas Eve. A silent legacy. A buried truth. Then let them, she said. I'm not the ghost anymore. I'm the witness. Fort Carson was buried beneath a thick layer of snow when the C-130 touched down in the early hours before dawn. Scarlett James stepped off the ramp with Ryan at her side, her boots sinking into the cold ground she hadn't walked on in over a year. The last time she was here, she left broken and silent. This time, she returned with fire in her chest and a mission. They were met at the hangar by Colonel Evelyn Whitmore, the same woman who had debriefed her after Kandahar. Time hadn't softened Whitmore. Her hair was grayer, her eyes harder, but the respect in her voice was unmistakable. Lieutenant James, she said, saluting sharply, we're glad you came back. Scarlett returned the salute with steady eyes. I came back because someone doesn't want me here. Whitmore nodded. Exactly why we're reopening the file. Inside the secure command room, Scarlett was handed access to a private terminal. Her clearance had been reinstated temporarily and quietly. What she found sent chills through her. The Christmas Eve operation had been officially sanitized, a term used when truth is selectively erased. Her name was barely mentioned. Entire sections of the mission were missing. And worse, the surviving soldiers listed were either retired or mysteriously dead. Scarlett leaned back in her chair, stunned. They wiped the whole thing, she muttered. Even the civilian rescue records are gone. Ryan stood behind her, jaw clenched. They knew it was more than a combat mission. That's why they came after you. Colonel Whitmore laid a new folder in front of them, this one marked with red Operation Night Window, Status Active Monitoring. 2 weeks ago, Whitmore began. A private defense contractor submitted a patent linked to encrypted drone software identical to what was recovered by your team in Kandahar. Scarlett's eyes snapped up. That data was locked in black-tier storage. No civilian should have touched it. Unless someone sold it, Whitmore replied grimly. Suddenly, the picture became clearer. The so-called rescue mission had been a cover. Their team had stumbled onto a covert tech extraction, and now someone was weaponizing it in the private sector. We think you're the last living person who saw the raw data before it disappeared, Whitmore said, which makes you the key to stopping whatever's coming. Scarlett swallowed hard. For so long, she believed her story ended in survival. But now, it was about prevention. She wasn't just a witness, she was a firewall. Whitmore leaned in. "We want you back, not just to testify. We want you to lead a new task force. Unofficial, quiet. You'll have operational autonomy, you and whoever you trust." Scarlett looked at Ryan. He raised an eyebrow and smirked. "Guess I'm not going home for the holidays," he said. Scarlett turned back to the colonel. "What's the catch? You'll be off the books? No medals? No backup. If this goes sideways, you'll be completely disavowed." Scarlett didn't blink. "Sounds familiar," she said. "Standing up? When do we start?" Whitmore smiled faintly. "You already have." That night, inside a hidden hangar beneath Fort Carson, Scarlett was led into a room filled with gear, maps, encrypted servers, and a warboard covered in names, lines, and threats. It wasn't an army. It was a scalpel. She stood in front of it all and took a deep breath. "This time," she whispered, "we finish what we started." Ryan stepped up beside her. "You ready for this?" Scarlett didn't hesitate. "I was born ready. I just forgot for a while." And with that, Scarlett James, once invisible, once forgotten, became the spearhead of a mission that could stop a war before it ever began. Not as a broken veteran, not as a lost name on a forgotten patch, but as the soldier who remembered and chose to fight again. Scarlett James stood in front of the glowing warboard, her eyes scanning every name, location, and red string pinned between possible threats. A month ago, she had been sitting alone in an airport terminal, mistaken for a homeless woman. Now, she was commanding a covert team, operating in the shadows, unraveling a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of defense intelligence. But this transformation wasn't instant. It came with scars. Every morning at Fort Carson's underground operations center started the same early, cold, and heavy. Scarlett led her unit, dubbed Echo Shadow, through mission briefings, gear checks, and encrypted updates. Each day tested her endurance, not just physically, but emotionally. For the first few days, she found herself slipping into old habits, keeping quiet, keeping distance. Years of trauma and shame had trained her to survive alone. She wasn't used to people depending on her. But the mission didn't allow for silence. When their first field op went sideways in a snowy Colorado outpost, an informant compromised. Their extraction team delayed. Scarlett was forced to step up. One of the new recruits, a sharp but inexperienced cyber intel officer named Lena Ortiz, froze during a breach. Panic hit. The room lit red. Alarms screamed. Scarlett didn't yell. She didn't bark orders. She walked straight up to Lena, placed a firm hand on her shoulder, and said calmly, "You're not alone here. I've been where you are. But right now, I need you to be with me. Eyes up. Let's move." Lena snapped back into focus. The breach was patched. The team extracted clean, and when they returned to base, Scarlett didn't go back to isolation. She stayed, debriefed everyone personally, and thanked Lena in front of the team. That night, as she sat alone in the briefing room reviewing drone footage, Ryan Matthews walked in with 2 mugs of coffee. "You're different," he said, handing one to her. Scarlett glanced up, smirking. "What, no more ghost in the shadows?" He shook his head. "You're not hiding anymore. You're leading." Scarlett looked around the room, the maps, the files, the names of her team. "I didn't think I had it in me," she admitted. "I thought the only thing I was good at was surviving." Ryan took a sip, watching her. "Scarlett, you didn't come back to survive. You came back to win. There's a difference." The words landed deeper than he realized. In the days that followed, Scarlett began training Echo Shadow not just for their mission, but for resilience. She introduced silent comm drills, tactics she learned in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. She taught Lena and another recruit, a former recon pilot named Finn Barrett, how to read body language in hostile zones, lessons that saved lives during their second operation when communication was jammed. But perhaps most significantly, Scarlett began telling her story. Not on a stage, not in some viral video, but in quiet moments, with her team sharing what Kandahar had done to her, what being forgotten had felt like, and how easy it was to let the pain make you invisible. And slowly, something changed. The team didn't just follow her, they trusted her. She became more than a soldier, she became a compass. On their fourth mission, intercepting an arms handoff connected to the stolen drone software, Scarlett's leadership was tested again. The intel was bad. The drop location was rigged. As their vehicle came under fire in a mountain pass, she had to make a split-second decision: push forward or pull out. Her voice came over the radio, calm and commanding. Hold formation. Keep your eyes sharp. We don't retreat, we reposition. Echo Shadow. Redirect to Route C. We box them in from elevation. They followed without question. Minutes later, the enemy convoy was neutralized. Data recovered. No casualties. As the snow settled on their parked vehicles and the team caught their breath, Lena turned to Scarlett and said, "You didn't just save us. You taught us how to survive like you." Scarlett didn't reply right away. She just looked out across the mountains. She'd once believed strength meant carrying the burden alone. Now she realized true strength was teaching others to carry it with you. And in that moment, far from headlines and parades, Scarlett James became something more powerful than a hero. She became a leader reborn. The final mission wasn't supposed to happen on Christmas Eve. But perhaps in some twisted way, it was always meant to. Scarlett James stood on a cold rooftop overlooking the industrial outskirts of Richmond, Virginia. Below her, a heavily guarded warehouse buzzed with movement. Inside, hidden behind layers of shell corporations and stolen tech, was a mobile control unit for the weaponized drone system she had nearly died to protect years ago in Kandahar. Now, that same technology was being prepped for a covert demonstration to foreign buyers. Her pulse was steady, her breath visible in the icy night air. It had all led to this: the broken silence, the patch no one understood, the mission buried so deep even the Pentagon denied it. Echo Shadow was positioned and waiting. Ryan was in the adjacent building, scoping snipers. Lena and Finn had already hacked the interior grid. The op was ghost classified, no backup, no satellites, no air support. Scarlett's voice came through their earpieces, calm and centered. "Tonight, we're not just stopping a deal, we're stopping history from repeating itself. Stay sharp, watch each other's backs, and remember why we started." With synchronized precision, they descended into the storm. Inside the warehouse, chaos erupted in minutes. Strobe lights, flashbangs, the roar of suppressed rifles. Scarlett moved like smoke, silent, fast, lethal. Every movement told a story. Every order she gave was rooted in everything she had learned, lived, and lost. As she reached the central console room, a shadow stepped from the dark. The man from the airport. The one in the gray coat. He wasn't just muscle. He was the orchestrator. He held a silenced pistol at his side and spoke calmly. "Scarlett James, I was hoping you wouldn't show up." She didn't hesitate. "Funny, I was hoping you would." His smile faded. "You don't understand what you're stopping. This tech, this power, its evolution." "No," she replied, stepping closer. "It's theft, it's death, and it was never yours to use." He raised the pistol. She didn't flinch. In the same breath, Lena's voice crackled in her ear, "Firewall down." "Upload initiated." The man's eyes widened. Scarlett's team had already extracted the data and pushed it to a classified whistleblower node. The truth couldn't be buried again. "You lose," she whispered. The gun never fired. Before he could react, Ryan burst in from the side, subduing him with a swift takedown. Scarlett didn't say a word. She just turned and walked out into the night, snow swirling around her like ash from the past. 36 hours later, the story broke. Not on national news, but through quiet channels, high-level resignations followed. The tech deal was shut down, investigations were quietly launched, and the names of Scarlett and her team, though not public, were cleared, honored silently through military channels. Colonel Whitmore met her one final time in a secure briefing room. "We owe you everything," she said, "but you'll never get a parade." Scarlett smiled. "I don't need one. I just need peace." Whitmore paused. "What will you do now?" Scarlett looked out the window. Snow was falling again. "Go back to the airport. I think," she said, "not to disappear. Just to be someone again." Weeks later, at that same terminal in Chicago, a little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Look," she whispered. "It's that soldier from the story." Scarlett sat near Gate 32 again, this time in a clean jacket, holding a small duffel bag, sipping coffee, not hiding, not waiting, just living. A man nearby offered to buy her lunch. An older woman asked if she had served. Scarlett nodded humbly. No one mistook her for homeless anymore, not because she dressed differently, but because she carried herself differently. She had reclaimed her identity not just as a soldier, but as a survivor, as a leader, as a reminder that sometimes the most heroic stories are the ones no one hears, except those who needed to. And there, beneath the same flickering Christmas lights, Scarlett James finally found what she had been searching for. Not recognition, not revenge, but peace earned through purpose. The story of Scarlett James teaches us that true strength isn't found in medals or parades. It's found in the quiet choice to stand back up when the world forgets you. She was dismissed, misjudged, even hunted, yet she chose not to disappear, but to rise. In doing so, she reclaimed her story from the shadows of trauma, shame, and silence. Her transformation from forgotten veteran to silent leader wasn't just about courage, it was about purpose, and choosing to make her pain mean something. And that's a lesson for all of us. If Scarlett's journey moved you, subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss the next story. Share this with someone who needs a reminder they're not forgotten. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.